Welcome back to the channel. Today I'd like to look at some snipers and look at their hip fire function. Of course, we're talking about the charge rifle, the sentinel, and the longbow. We will not be using any attachments on these weapons today, just so we know what they're actually capable of. So let's get to it. ADS, of course, high damage. That's what snipers are for, nice and precise, right? So that's what we ultimately want to get to, just hip firing. But look at what happens whenever we just hip fire. That beam pattern goes crazy. I mean, look at it crossing from the top right shoulder all the way down to the left hip. We got to get that under control a little bit. So learning that recoil pattern of up, right, down, left, back into the center, that can take us from, you know, those 40s, 50s kind of damage, and then can take you up into more like the 70s here. I don't know about you, but that's what I always feel like I get hit with on these guns in the middle of a match. It's just decimated, even at close range. So trying to narrow down that pattern of the beam takes a little bit of practice, but definitely doable, and I think it's worth the results. And that's all the way to the back here, at the back of the, or in the sand, past the back of the platform. Once we get to the back of the platform, you still got to mitigate some of that recoil, but once you get a little bit closer, you don't even have to. If you're that close, you're on target, you're on target. It doesn't matter. The Sentinel is a bit of a different story though. If you look in the top right there, you can see my little zoomed in target with the dummy. Those little red dots, of course, are my shot placement. Where I should be hitting. And then you can see the dots outside of that, right? It's not even close. So at this range, I wouldn't even consider not doing an ADS with it. As soon as we hit the target next to it, that's how far off it was. So whenever we're out this far, I'm not gonna do this at all. This is just for testing. And then at this point here, we're still looking at some pretty bad shot placement. I mean, one lucky hit is not what I'm looking for in a fight. I'm looking for some pretty consistent hits. So even up here, I think overall it was like a 25% hit rate. I'll throw some numbers up there in a second. And I shot a lot of rounds with the Sentinel just to make sure that it wasn't on accident that I was missing or something. So here we go, a little melee of about 20 rounds or so just to make sure. It's really not looking all that good, is it? I mean, you really need to be able to hit your opponents if you're going to use a gun. So you're looking at about 6 out of 20 rounds hit, and that 25% seems okay, but whenever you factor in this, how long it takes to reload the gun, you know, maybe choose a different weapon. So let's hit up the longbow and see what happens. Already we're a little less than 20%, you know, 1 out of 6, so 12.5, 16%. And that's all the way to the back here, so I think we're doing better than the Sentinel already. About 25%, so at least as good as the Sentinel from that far range. As soon as we start moving in, 30% there, 33%. And once we start moving up here, we start getting shots a little more consistent as well. There is some tempo to the guns that you have to master, but I mean, again, standing still target, I'm standing still. This isn't, you know, it's not what's going to happen in a fight, it's what is the gun even capable of. So once we're up here, okay, now we're looking pretty good, probably going to make the hit. And then once we're up here, okay, standing still, dummy standing still, I'm hitting all my hits. So let's try throwing a little bit of movement into this and see what happens. Oh, that looks familiar, doesn't it? We're just going to stop while we're ahead. That wraps it up for this video. I hope you learned something and you're going to be able to apply some of the hip fire into your Apex games. If you'd hit that like and subscribe, always appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.